Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome back to another week in PIRKEI AVOS, the ethics of our fathers. We were on Hanukkah break, and we learned about Hanukkah before. Now we're going to go back into the words of our sages. And it's really fascinating because every week that we learn this together, it's kind of the Mishnah that catches my eye that week is what we end up speaking about. And as I was preparing for tonight's shir, I found that this Mishnah, which was picked quote-unquote randomly, is very much connected to the three parshas this week, and the following week. We'll see with the life of Yosef HaTzadik, Yosef, our righteous forefather. So I'm over here in the second chapter of PIRKEI AVOS, and in the art scroll print, it's page 554, and it is Mishnah number Tes Zayin, which is 16. So in the English, that's 555, number 16. And the Mishnah says, Rabbi Yeshua says, Ayin hara, an evil eye, v'yetzer hara, and the evil inclination, v'sinas habriyos, and hatred that one has for other people, maitzian es ha'adam min ha'olam, it will remove a person from this world. And obviously the simple explanation is these things will bring about and hasten a person's time in this world. He'll end up leaving this world a little bit prematurely. However, there's also the deeper understanding, which is that there's an olam, there's a world that a person has, a life that a person lives. There is a reality that we exist in, and it's supposed to be a reality that is filled with joy and happiness and energy and simcha and optimism and things to look forward to. There is an olam, there's a world that a person exists in between them and Hashem. There's an olam, there's a world that they have between them and their family and their friends, and there's an olam, there's a personal world that a person has with themselves. And when a person falls into the trap of these three things, Ayin hara, an evil eye, which we'll see what that means, the yetzer hara, the evil inclination, which unfortunately most of us are very well versed in, and sinas habriyos, which is the hatred for other people, sinas, a detestability that we have for others, it will be maitzin, it will remove a person from the olam, from those worlds that we are describing over here, the worlds that should be filled with goodness and blessing and peace, happiness, harmony, inner sanctum. A person will be removed from all of that, and they will find themselves torn apart inside, worrying, anxious, angry, this, you name it, all the different things that can happen to a person. So one of the questions that we have to deal with tonight in this Mishnah is, what exactly is the connection between these three things? Meaning Chazal, our sages, could have chosen any of the detrimental attributes or hanhaga's way of life that a person chooses for themselves that will be removing from this world. The question is, what is the connection between the ayin hara, the evil eye, the yetzer hara, the evil inclination, and the sinas habriyos, and the hatred that one has for other people? Why are these the three pillars or the three pitfalls that a person falls into that will remove them from the world physically, will bring a person to his ultimate demise much earlier? A person who's eaten alive with hatred, a person who allows his yetzer hara to run rampant inside of them, someone who's ayin hara, whatever that is, this evil eye that is always looking at the world in the wrong way. So it wears down on his temperament, it wears down on his physical self. So it will remove the person from this world. But there's so many things that we could get involved with. There's so many negative traits that we could become a part of. Kas, anger is pretty bad. Anger is such a thing that eats a person up alive. Jealousy eats a person up alive. It rots the bones, as we know. How about anxiety and worry and all of these things that a person has inside of them? Those things can remove a person from the world. So what exactly is the connection between the I, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, and the hatred that one has of others, which these are the three things that work together to remove a person min ha'olam from the world, his own world, his reality with Hashem, his relationship with others. It just totally destroys a person. So let's go one by one, and then we'll see, I think, fascinating how it fits into these parshas that we're learning over here, all about Yosef HaTzadik. So the first explanation over here is, we have to understand, what does it mean, a bad eye? It means you have macular degeneration of your eyes. What does that mean over here? You can't see, you're blind? What does it mean? So the Rabbeinu Yonah writes the following. He says, first of all, ayin hara, an evil eye, a bad eye comes to the person, mishe einai samech bechelkai, somebody who is not happy with his personal lot in life. They're not pleased with all the things that they have. They don't look at the blessings that are right there in front of them. What happens to them? So they begin delving into other people's lives. And they begin looking at their neighbor or at their friends or at their brother who's very successful. They start looking in and they ask themselves, when will I be as rich as that person over there? When will I have as many possessions as my neighbor down the street does? When will I be able to upgrade on my car like this guy does every couple of years? When will I be able to do that? Says Rabbeinu Yonah, what does such a life engender for a human being? Number one, it causes bad to the person themselves who thinks like this. And number two, it causes bad to the person that you are looking at. How could it be that if I am looking at other people's things, wishing and wanting that I should have them for myself, how does that cause bad to somebody else? How does that work? If I go with my hands and I smash their things, I understand I did bad to them. If I walk in the middle of the night stealthily into their home and I steal the possessions that I would like for myself, so I've caused bad to them. But how is it that by looking at another person's things and wishing that I had them instead of that person over there, or even if I don't wish they didn't have it, let them keep it, but I also want such a thing, how does that cause bad to that person and their possessions? So he says over here a fascinating idea. And he says, if you go and you'll ask the wise ones of nature, I guess in those we would call them the scientists or the geologists, those that understand the rhythms of this world, they will tell you the following information. Anything that a person has, and he says that when you look at somebody else's possessions, you look at their car, their house, their money, their vacation, their children, their spouse. You look at their simcha, the bar mitzvah or the wedding that they made. You look at the way that they are dressed. You look at their shoes. You look at their belt. You look at anything that somebody else has that you start, the wheels are churning inside of you. You wish that you'd have that for yourself. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, you know what happens? Avir oilim in a machshava. There's actually like an avir. There's like an aura that comes up from your thoughts. There's like an atmosphere that develops as a result of your thoughts. V'sorev es hadavarim, and it can burn up those things that you place your eye onto. When you place your eye, your wanting eye onto somebody else's property, when you desire to have somebody else's things, when you are burning inside with what they have because you're not happy with what you have, so you create metaphysically in this world a power that has the ability to actually go and destroy something that somebody else has. And he says, I'm not talking, he said, hocus pocus. We're not talking about mystical, Kabbalistic incantations. He says, go and ask the Chachmei HaTeva, go and ask those that are in tune with the nature of this world, and they will tell you the same thing. I had a Rebbe in Eretz Yisrael who said that he was not a wealthy man. He didn't have a fancy house. He didn't have any fancy vases or silver, china. He was a simple person. But he said he had a neighbor who every once in a while, they lived, but they were way down the street. Every once in a while they would come over to visit. And he said he used to watch this woman when she would come over to visit the house. And she would stare around at all the things in their house. This little vase that cost $2.99, or this glass that cost $1.99 from the 99-cent store, or this one over here, or this china plate, whatever it is that they had. And he said, inevitably, every single time after she would leave the house, something in their house would it would break. It would fall off the shelf. It would fall off of the table. Someone would sit down in a chair. The chair would break. It was good for 5-10 years. Suddenly it would break. He said, this woman had such an eye in her, such an evil eye. And again, these were not for glamorous things. She had such an eye in her, such an evil eye for their things. No matter when she came over, every time that she left, something would break. Says the Rabbi Yonah, that's the way of the world. The way of the world is you're powerful. And that your thoughts and your ideas and your desires in this world, they can create reality around you. And they could be damaging to other people as well. So how careful we have to be. But that's for somebody else. Then he writes, V'gam b'kirba yisarif, you burn yourself up inside as well. Because you start desiring things and wanting things that you perhaps and most likely don't have the means or the abilities to get for yourself. These thoughts now that you have, it ends up destroying your body. Your whole spirit gets weakened and lessened. And it will remove you from this world. It will hasten your departure from the physical world as a result of hurting and destroying your body over there. Says Rabbi Yonah, there's two things that you're going to do to yourself. Number one, you're going to hurt other people. And if that's not bad enough to make you stop, think about yourself. You love yourself, don't you? But the reason that you want somebody else's things is because you want more for yourself, right? So that means that you really care about yourself. So if you really care about yourself and you love yourself and you want yourself to have more, so then why would you create this eye in her, this evil eye, which is burning into other people's things, which at the end of the day is really burning deep down inside of your heart, inside of your kishkas. That's where all the stomach issues come from, and that's where all the nervous heartbeats come from, and that's where all the aches and pains come from, says the Rabbi Yonah. And then you destroy your life. So if you care about yourself, that's why you want that person's things, because you want to have more. And you love your life, that's why you'd like to enhance your life with all the things that you don't have. So then perhaps you should be a little bit concerned about the actual life itself. And therefore, we're saying over here, a person has to learn how to remove the ayin hara, the evil eye, from themselves. So how does a person do that? Well, the opposite of the ayin hara, of the evil eye, is the ayin toiv, is the good eye. And the good eye is when a person, first of all, it has to start with being happy with their own personal lot in life. I am sameach bechelki, I rejoice, I'm satisfied with what I have. And then when I see somebody else has bracha that I don't have, somebody else has possessions that I don't have, somebody else has success that I don't have, my eyes, instead of looking at it negatively because I'm jealous and I want more for myself, on the other hand, I look at it lovingly and I look at them with endearment and with happiness for them, and therefore I infuse blessing into their life instead of, God forbid, removing it. Meaning, if I'm able to, with an ayin hara, says Rabbi Yonah, to create this atmosphere, this climate control, so to speak, around me, that could end up burning up other people's things. So that's on the negative. Imagine if your intentions are positive and they are good. Imagine if you want only the best for another person. So when you look out at their things, when you look out at their house or their children or their spouse or their money or their acquisitions, instead of feeling bad for yourself that you don't have it, you are happy for them, and then you're adding more bracha, more blessing. That's the power that we have inside of ourselves. We could either destroy other people's things, or we could give blessing to other people's things. The Torah tells us that at the end of Moshe Rabbeinu's life, he had already been punished that he was not going to go into the land of Israel. And of course, that was the most painful thing in the world. He spent all of the years of his life trying to leave the Midbar, the wilderness, and bring the people across the river and get them into Eretz Yisrael to live where we're supposed to live happily ever after. And Moshe Rabbeinu knew that that was the purpose of all of the exile from Egypt, to go, and the redemption was to get us to Mount Sinai, receive the Torah, and go into Eretz Yisrael and become a great nation. But he hit the rock. We know the story. And he was punished severely. Hashem said, you can't be the one who's going to take them into Eretz Yisrael. And he davened, he tried, he begged HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He came so close to opening up the gates and rescinding the decree. And Hashem said, quiet, enough, you're not coming in. I'm not letting you in. The very end of his life, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings Moshe Rabbeinu up to the top of a mountain called Har Nevo. And he says, Moshe, I want you to look out from that mountain. Tell me what you see. And from that mountaintop, guess what Moshe Rabbeinu was able to see? He was able to see Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Moshe Rabbeinu, take a very good look at the land. I want you to look in all the corners of the land. I want your gaze to be upon everything. And the Rogatchover Rav asks, what is Hashem sadistic over here? He's trying to torture Moshe Rabbeinu. All of his life he's waiting to go into Eretz Yisrael. And then Hashem tells him, you cannot come in no matter what you do, I'm not letting you in. And now he comes and says, look, look what you can't get. You can't go to Eretz Yisrael. But take a look anyway, see what you're going to be missing out on. Look at the rolling hills, look at the valleys, look at the trees, look at the people. Look, you can't have it. He's playing games with Moshe Rabbeinu's emotions. He's trying to torture him even more to show him what he's not going to have. No, says the Rogatchover, it's exactly the opposite. Moshe Rabbeinu, he was makabel, he accepted the decree that HaKadosh Baruch Hu placed on him. He didn't ask, why me? How could it be? You know that I want to go. Hashem said. I'm not meant to be. When Mashiach will come, I'll go inside. But Moshe Rabbeinu had such, what's called histapkus hanefesh. He had such a burning spiritual desire to be in that land because he knew it's the most spiritual, holy of places of all. And therefore his desire for Klal Yisrael to be in that land and to succeed and to prosper, and to grow, and to flourish, and to have tremendous opportunities to serve Hashem was great. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Moshe Rabbeinu, I need your glance. I need your ayin toiv, the blessings that will come from your eyes, which again, the eyes are the windows to the neshama, to the soul. That means I need your soul to peer out into the Holy Land and douse it with all of your blessing, all of your good wishes, all of your warmth. And so Moshe Rabbeinu, the faithful servant of Hashem, he took his task seriously. And this was his job, this was his duty, not with jealousy, not with regret, not with anger and frustration and disappointment towards Hashem, nothing at all. It was all with goodness in his heart. And he peered out of his eyes, which was the burning neshama that he had, and it looked the entire expanse of Eretz Yisrael. And he bathed it in his kedusha, in his holiness, in his feelings of goodness, of warmth, of love for Klal Yisrael, of his endearment to the Ribbono Shel Olam, and that he wanted everything for their good. And Eretz Yisrael, until this very day, it bears the stamp of the approval, of the love and the kedusha, the holy radiance of Moshe Rabbeinu's everlasting, eternal glance. This is the way that we combat the ayin hara, the evil eye of a person. We have to work on ourselves to be able to see the good in others and see the good what others have, and to be happy and rejoice for them. And then when you look like that, it's all bracha, it's all goodness. One of the great sages who passed away, it's over already 20 years ago, his name was of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Shlomo Zalman was one of the great halachic authorities of our generation. He was a Rosh Yeshiva, and he was known as a tremendous tzaddik. If you ever see a smile of his face, radiating simcha and joy. Not a man that had a very simple life, but with everything he had, always with joy. He was known to be a very loving Rebbe of all of his Talmidim, of his students. And once one of his students came to him and he said, Rebbe, my Baruch Hashem, our family is growing, and we need to move to a new apartment, and we're looking at two different ones, and I wanted to discuss with you, which do you think would be the right neighborhood, the right kind of a building, the right place for our family to go? So Shlomo Zalman said, well, tell me, where is this one, where is that one, how many rooms, how big is the salon, how big is the kitchen, where is it located, which floor is it on? And he told him the two different choices that he had. And Shlomo Zalman thought about it, and he said, you know what, I think the one over there on that street in that neighborhood, that will be the best place for you to go. So he asked him, when are you going to be there next? He said, well, as a matter of fact, we have a meeting tomorrow with the broker to finalize the deal. So Auerbach asked him, when is that? What time? So his student said, 9 o'clock in the morning. Okay. And the address is, yes. Okay, didn't understand why he was asking so many questions. The next morning, 9 a.m., this young man and his wife, they're there to meet the broker, and they're ready to finalize the deal. And as they are walking through the apartment one last time, suddenly there's a knock on the door. And they go to the front door and they see, lo and behold, the great Rosh Yeshiva, the tzaddik, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, is there himself. And his student says, Rebbe, what are you doing here? He said, I just came to look at the apartment that you're going to buy. I want to see it for myself. He said, take me for a tour. So he takes him into the bedrooms. Ooh, very shayna, nice, very nice size, beautiful. He takes him to the kitchen, beautiful kitchen. I'm sure your wife will be very happy over here. The main living room, dining room area. Look at that space. You'll be able to put the table over here, have all your children, the guests coming around the shop. Beautiful, beautiful. And he went through every square inch of the new apartment, and he looked, and on everything he said, fantastic, beautiful. It's a beautiful place for you to live. And then as he got ready to leave, he came over to his student, he blessed him. You should have bracha, v'atzlacha, blessing and success. You should have nachas from your children. Your family should grow and flourish over here. Should be a wonderful bias neman, a house of faithfulness amongst Klal Yisrael. And then he said to leave. And the student followed him down to say, Rebbe, I don't understand. You knew that I was going to buy the apartment anyway. We discussed it. Why did you have to come? And he said, because since that you're moving in here, he said, everything is with bracha. And it has to be with bracha and with mazel. So I wanted to come and see with my own eyes and wish my most heartfelt desires for your blessings in this world. And I wanted to leave it inside the walls and the rooms of your apartment. That's the ayin toiva. That is the good eye that a person has to have. The next thing that the Mishnah says over here is, which will hurt a person badly, is what's called their yetzer hara, the evil inclination. As I mentioned in the beginning of this year, unfortunately, this is not something that is a stranger to any of us. And if it is a stranger to you, it just means that you have no idea at all how much you are wrapped around the finger of the Yetzer Hara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, already in the very beginning of time, created something called the Yetzer Hara. It used to be known as the Nachash, as the serpent that was there in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden. And this Nachash was an evil desire that was in the world that tries to get man to do sin. It goes and it chips away at his clarity, it chips away at his holiness, at his sanctity, it chips away at his amunah, his belief. The Yetzer Hara masterminds so many different things that will happen in your life, comes this way and that way, comes some guerrilla warfare around the way, so you're not even aware of what's going on. And his mission in life is to try to destroy a person from moving forward in his everlasting relationship with Hashem. That is the Yetzer Hara's mission. Now, on one hand, it's very, very bad, because he creates complicated situations in our life. He puts things in our way that are confusing and difficult and challenging. He forces us sometimes to choose between what is right and what is wrong. And his words of appeasement, of seduction are so powerful. Many times, unfortunately, we fall prey to his tricks. So the Yetzer Hara is a very, very bad thing when you give into it. On the other hand, as we've discussed many times over the months and the years, the Yetzer Hara also has a great advantage in this world. And that is that if you fight the battle properly, and you find the inner courage and strength inside of yourself, when the challenge is sitting in front of you, when the crossroads is going in two different directions, and you need to make the right decision over the wrong one, and you do, so then the Yetzer Hara has been your greatest friend, and it has been your greatest attribute, because it allows you now to make decisions with your free will and overcome and accomplish things that you could not have done otherwise. But here the Mishnah is saying that if a person is going to fall prey to that Yetzer Hara, and they are going to limit their abilities to make the right decisions, and they're going to become entrenched, as the Mefarshim write over here, in the taivas olam hazeh, in the desires of this physical, earthy, transient world. And they're going to forget about the neshama. They're going to forget about the ruchnius, the spirituality. They'll forget that if they make the wrong choice, they are forfeiting a greater, stronger bond between their soul and the Ribbono Shel Olam. So then, Maitzinas Adam min Adam, it removes a person from his world. Remember, each and every one of us have an olam. We have a world, malay, an olam, malay, complete world with ourselves. Man is a microcosm of the world. All the forces of the universe, of creation, are inside of a person. And if a person uses them wisely, then the whole world is resting on your shoulders and your actions, and you are most praiseworthy. But if a person, unfortunately, keeps giving in and in and in to that Yetzer Hara, and he falls for the tricks, how many times can we fall for the tricks? Again, we're going to fall for that trick. Again, we're going to give up. Again, we're going to stumble. Again, we will end up faltering in the pathways that we're, again, how many times can we do it? Well, just like a person puts his neshama to rest at night when he goes to sleep, and Hashem restores that soul every single day with new strength and new vigor and new energy to go and conquer the day, guess what? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mechadesh, the Yetzer Hara will renew itself each and every day as well. And he comes ready for battle, ready to go to war to try to destroy a person every day brand new. And that's the challenge of life. The challenge of life is, are we going to overcome, or are we going to be overrun by the Yetzer Hara? Are we going to ascend the ladder in the right direction, or are we going to keep falling off and going down? Which way, what are we going to do? Says the Mishnah over here, and this is an obvious thing. The Mishnah doesn't even have to tell us this, but it is, as we'll see, the connection. It's telling us that if you will give in to that Yetzer Hara, that evil inclination which is trying to get you, then you will certainly be removed from the world. Now, you'll be removed spiritually, yes, and it will, once again, it will be mekatze, it will cut off years from your life. Because a person who is immersed, totally immersed in the physicality of this world, completely immersed in chasing after their desires and the like, and the person has a disconnect to the heart and to the soul, so then that person, their body is just going to begin to break down. I remember years ago, there was a period in my life where I was getting into juicing. There's a whole religion out there, carrots and celery and garlic and beets and all the different things. It costs, you have to own a farm to be able to do it properly, because it takes so many vegetables to go into that thing. So in order to know the benefits of juicing, someone gave me a book that was written by the king of juicing himself. I don't remember the man's name at this point. And he spoke about all of his physical ailments that he had and everything, and he got into juicing, how it solved the intestines and it solved his blood and this and that, all the different things. But the book didn't tell you what happened to this man at the end of his life. The man, the juicer, who was totally entrenched in carrots and celery and broccoli. He ended up out of the blue. Now it could happen to anybody, but it happened out of the blue. This man at a relatively young age, suddenly he just dropped dead of a heart attack. The man whose whole life was health and the body and the juicing and the kale and the rhubarb and the green apples and the red apples and everything in between that made the elixir of life. Well, that's not what life is really all about. That's just part of your life. Yes, we're obligated to treat our bodies like treating them well. You only have one body, so you have to take good care of it. Eat right, sleep right, exercise. We have to do all those things. But that's not the mission in life. We were brought into this world to be much more than just juicers. We were brought into this world to become the greatest spiritual entity that we possibly could. And therefore, says the Mishnah, if you get too involved in what this world seems to offer us, that also is going to remove a person quickly or shorter or sooner from this world. So, ayin hara, the evil eye, bad thing. Yetzer hara, we know that already. It's a terrible thing. And the last thing the Mishnah says over here is sinas habrios, hatred of another person. Hatred, little, like we say all the time by Tisha B'Av. We speak about during the 3 weeks, there's something on sinas chinam, where I despise another person for no reason other than the fact they just bother me. What do they do? Nothing. They just bother me. Maybe I don't like their laugh, I don't like the way they talk, I don't like what they do, they talk to this, whatever it is, I just can't stand. Now, I always justify in my mind that there's probably 1,000 reasons why it is that I can't stand this person. And therefore I'm entitled to share my hatred about them. I'm entitled to look down on them. I'm entitled to make fun of them. If a person would think about all the conversations that we have, putting down other people, that's sinas habrios, that's hatred for another person. Who gives us the right to do such a thing? Start keeping track of our conversations. How many times other people's names come up in the average conversation? Sit at your Shabbos table, maybe to play a game over there. Keep track. How many times in the course of a conversation, talking about the Parsha, you mention something about somebody in the Parsha and say, oh, that's like that girl in class. That's sinas habrios, that's hatred for another person. Where does the sinas habrios come from? Where does that hatred come from? So this is where we're going to come to our conclusion. What this has to do with the life of Yosef HaTzadik. And the Magen Avos, Rav Shlomo Kluger, writes over here the following: Shein ayin hara sholit b'Yisrael. We're so worried about ayin hara. Someone, we're going to have a car, someone's going to look at a car, boom, our car's going to combust because someone looked at it in the wrong way. We're going to make a chasana, we're going to be singing, dancing, have a great time, and there's someone there whose eyes are burning with ayin hara. Oh, that's it. It's going to be a terrible marriage. God forbid. Why are we so worried about ayin hara? Say Chazal, our sages tell us that what? It's that Ein ayin hara sholit b'Yisrael. Ayin hara, the evil eye, does not rest upon the Jewish people. So this thing that Rabbi Yonah is talking about, that scientifically speaking, that you create this negativity, these forces that can go burn up other people's things, it's not true. It doesn't exist by the Jewish people. Mitzad habracha shenizbarach Yosef. Because of the blessing that Yosef HaTzadik received from his father at the end of next week's parsha, when Yaakov Avinu gives many blessings to all of his children, the one that he gives to Yosef is Bein Peiras Yosef Bein Paras Ali Ayin. That Yosef is a very charming son. He's very charming to the eye. But he's Ali Ayin, the Gemara says, he is above the evil eye. Yosef, the tzaddik, the righteous one, was above the evil eye. That means that if anybody would have looked down on Yosef, anybody would have been jealous of him, if anybody would have thought to themselves, I could have what Yosef has, why does he have so much? He was Ale Ayin, he was above the evil eye. And those of us that are the offspring of Yosef HaTzadik, because we're all part of this great mishpacha, this family called Klal Yisrael. So in reality, we too are Ale Ayin, we are above the evil eye. Now, but that comes with a caveat. There are stipulations in order for this bracha to rest upon us. And that is the following. That Yosef was Yosef HaTzadik. He was righteous. Why was he called righteous? Because in the parsha, in last week's parsha, Yosef HaTzadik, 2 weeks ago, Yosef went through the greatest nisayon, the greatest challenge of the Yetzer Hara that was ever known to mankind. And that was that he was seduced day and night by the wife of Potiphar. She wanted to seduce him, that she should lie carnally with him. And Yosef fought with tooth and nail to get himself out of that. And at the end of the day, when he almost gave in, because the Yetzer Hara was burning inside of him, and there was nobody else that was around the house, nobody could see what was going on, Yosef buckled down under the pressure, and he pulled himself away from this woman, and he saved himself, and he did not give in to the Yetzer Hara. Says the Magen Avos over here, that Yosef, who was the tzaddik, who lived in a world, in a realm where he was l'mayla min hatav, he was above the regular world. He was not entrenched in the earthiness, in the taivas and the desires. He answered to a higher authority. There was a much higher calling in his life. He was the life of someone that was his stapkus hanefesh. He wanted to be close to Hashem. Such a person, he's able to be elevated above the ayin hara, the ayin ra, the negative evil eye that other people have in this world. But it doesn't stop there, says the Magen Avos. There's one other thing. And this we already see in this week's parsha. Yosef was 17 years old. His brothers wanted to kill him. They took him, they ripped off his coat, they threw him into the pit, and they were going to leave him there with the scorpions and the snakes. And then they said, no, let's sell him as a slave. They pull him out of the pit, they give him to the Ishmaelim, they send him down to Egypt, and they sell him as a slave. Yosef HaTzadik went through 22 years where he was separated from his father, from his brothers, from his yeshiva, from his learning, from his shul. Nothing, total lockdown in his life. He was thrown into prison for 12 of those years. He was seduced by the wife of Potiphar for a lot of time. He had a very rough existence all on his own. And whose fault was it? His brothers. They did everything to him. They ruined his life. They threw him down into the pit. They sold him off as a slave. They hated him. They despised him. They were jealous. They wanted to get rid of him. In this week's parsha, Yosef HaTzadik and the brothers have the final showdown. And he can no longer hold himself back. He must reveal himself to his brothers. He must. And when he reveals himself, and all of the shame is on the brother's face because they realize what they did to this poor boy over here, and the embarrassment that they have, Yosef immediately tells them, I don't want you to think for a moment that I'm angry with you. I don't want you to think for a moment that I blame you for my situation in life. I don't want you to think for a moment that I despise you and I hate you as a result of what you did to me. Adarabba, on the other hand, said, Yosef, you know what I realized these 22 years? I realized that everything that's happened in my life, it's all because HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself wanted me to be here. He wanted me to prepare the years of plenty before the years of famine. He wanted me to get this place ready for my brothers and my father. Because down here in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, this is where we are going to end up flourishing eventually. It's all Hashem. Nothing to do with you. I'm not angry with you one iota. Do you know that's the opposite of hating another person? That's called ve'afta l'reyecha kamoicha. I love you the way that I love myself. I would want you to forgive me. I would want you to overlook what I did. I would want you to realize that everything that's happening in your life is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the master planner, who's running the entire universe so perfectly, he planned this as well. Therefore, I only love you, my dear brothers. And I will only try to make your life better from now on. I will not hold a grudge. I will not try to get back at you. I will not hate you. I will not be angry with you. On the other hand, as we see, Yosef showers his brothers with presents and gifts and love. And he gives them advice how to find favor in the eyes of Paro. And he brings his father down to Mitzrayim, and they're reunited, and everything is grand. Says the Magen Avos over here, that if you live a life like a Yosef HaTzadik, where you are someone that is controlled of your Yetzer Hara, you're someone that knows how to battle the fight on a daily basis and overcome the desires that try to pull you down farther into this world and away from who you really are. And if you are someone whose eyes are able to see the good in others, and instead of holding grudges and getting angry, you love that person because you realize it's all part of the plan. Everything that I've gone through in my life is just to make me a better person. So therefore you sent me down here. It wasn't you that sent me down here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent me down here. Yeah, 22 years, you think that it was misery? It wasn't misery. You don't know how close I am to HaKadosh Baruch Hu right now. And therefore my eyes see only good. They see only the good in you, the blessing, and I want only the best for you. When you live your life like that, says the Mishnah, then the ayin hara, the evil eye that others might want to have upon you, because they see your good life, they see your blessed life, they see the positive life, they see the success and the achievements in your life. Ale ayin, you're above all of that. They cannot penetrate you. Even though they're creating ruach, they're creating an avirah, an atmosphere. They're creating things that could burn up your life. Not yours. Because you are living above all of that. The Yetzer Hara, if you give into it, you're down here in this world. You can have ayin hara. Sinas habrios, hating another person for what they did to you, for what they said to you, for how they treated you. Well, you don't believe in Hashem? HaKadosh Baruch Hu made everything in Yosef's life so difficult, and Yosef didn't hold a grudge for even a second against his brothers? Not even a second. that means he was living in another realm. He was living in another world. He was living in a world with Hashem. Someone who lives like that, ayin hara, nothing to worry about. It cannot penetrate you at all. There is an amazing story which goes back many, many, many years to the days of Europe, pre-World War II, maybe even World War I. One of the great Gedolei Yisrael, one of the great leaders of Klal Yisrael, was a man by the name of Baruch Ber Leibowitz. He was a giant of a person. He was known as one of the greatest scholars and sages of his generation. Not only was he great in his scholarship, in his Torah knowledge, but he was great in his midos, in his character as well. He was in such control of his emotions, such control of the way that he treated others. The stories that are told about him are fascinating. At one point in his life, he had to come to America to fundraise for his yeshiva. And if I'm not mistaken, he ended up staying in America for something like close to 2 years. It wasn't travel the way you could. Earlier, we just get on the plane, you go and you come back. It was a boat, it was a long journey. You got here, you didn't just get back on the boat 1 week later. You went around from state to state, from town to town to raise money and collect the funds, and then you'd go back to the yeshiva, so you wouldn't have to come back here again for another 10 or 15 years. He was stationed in New York for those 2 or 3 years. And somehow the mayor of New York City found out about this great tzaddik that came for the Jewish people from Europe, and they met. The mayor of New York was not a Jew, but he was so impressed by Rabbi Baruch Ber Leibowitz, he said, I want to give you a key to the city of New York. And at the ceremony when he was giving over the key to Rabbi Baruch Ber Leibowitz, he said, if Charles Darwin would have met Rabbi Leibowitz, he never ever would have believed in the theory of evolution. Because there's no way that a man like this is the descendant of the monkeys and the apes. He's an angel of Hashem. Now this is the way this man lived. He was an angelic force. When he was in Europe and he was the Rosh Yeshiva, the yeshiva, he had a daughter, and it was time for the daughter to get married. And so you could imagine every young yeshiva boy in all of Europe, they wanted to marry the daughter of Rabbi Baruch Ber Leibowitz. This was like the greatest shidduch of the century. And finally, the right man was chosen. And the daughter was happy. Rabbi Baruch Ber Leibowitz and his wife, they were happy. The family was happy. The boys, everybody was happy. And they set the date. And the way that it used to work there in Europe was they would get engaged. They would make the commitment. The chassan would give some gifts to the kala. And the kala and the family, they would give several gifts to the chassan as well. They would give him a hat, a watch, and if I'm not mistaken, a long coat as well. And then they would separate for about maybe 6 months, and after 6 months, the chassan and his family would come to the kala's town and they would get married. And so the planning was getting ready for the wedding. And several months before the wedding was to take place, suddenly a box comes in the mail. And in that box is a hat, a watch, and a coat, with a letter attached that says, please forgive me, I don't think that this shidduch is going to work. I wish you a very wonderful life. Signed, the chassan. Can only imagine the traumatic pain that this caused to this poor kala, this poor girl. And Rabbi Baruch Ber Leibowitz, who was renowned as the greatest sage of that generation, the whole family, everybody would die to become part of that family. It was shocking news, shocking. And the way that the chassan did it, he didn't come like a mensch. He went like a coward. He sent it in a box, put a note attached, and he said, I'm sorry, I'm breaking the shidduch, it's over. And the girl was distraught, and she was broken, and it took quite some time for her to get over it. Life moves on. The girl found her shidduch. This boy went and he got married himself. Years later, this boy, who now was a married man, he was going for a position as a Rav of a certain community. And he needed a letter of recommendation. A letter of recommendation that would bespeak his qualities, the integrity of his character, his Torah knowledge, his ability to deal with people in the right way. And surprisingly, he made a contact with his old father-in-law-to-be, Rav Baruch Ber Leibowitz, and he asked him, would you please write me a letter of recommendation? Now let's just stop the story over here at this point. This is the boy that hurt your daughter beyond belief. This is the boy that broke the shidduch in a cowardly way. This is the boy that wasn't man enough to come and deal with it like a mensch. And he now wants you, his old Rebbe and his father-in-law-to-be, at one point, you should write the letter of recommendation that on your words, he's either going to get the job or not get the job. Rabbi Baruch Ber Leibowitz began crying when he got the letter. And he sat down in his room and he began writing a recommendation. And when he finished writing the recommendation, he read it over and over and over. And then he didn't trust himself, so he called in two of the bachrim from the yeshiva. And he said, please read this recommendation. I want to know if it sounds positive and good and favorable for this young man. And when they saw the name that he was writing about, they realized that it was this ex-son-in-law that he had. And they said, Rebbe, why are you asking us to read it? He says, because I'm afraid that maybe there's still some hatred in my heart. Maybe there's still some grudge that I'm holding against this boy. Maybe I'm going to try to take some revenge right now and I'll write something in an unfavorable way and he won't get the job. So I'm asking you, please make sure that I wrote this letter properly in order that I have absolved myself of my obligations to write him a favorable recommendation. The two bachrim that were standing there, they knew how great the Rebbe was. But they never realized his godless, his greatness was on that level. A person conquers the Yetzer Hara, which tries to drag him down into this world, and they conquer the sinas habrios, the hatred that is so easy and so natural for a person to fall into in this world. Then you get the birchas Yosef HaTzadik, the blessing of Yosef, the righteous one, which is Ben Paras Yosef, your charming son like Yosef HaTzadik, Ale Ayin, you're above any ayin hara that is there in the world against you. You're above any negativity that people will think about you. You will be above any keen, any jealousy that others have of your things, of your possessions, of your money, of your wealth, of your material success, and the like. And instead of the ayin hara, the evil eye, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is the Ali Ayin, his eyes are above everything. He is the one that will cast his countenance down upon you. And then your life will be filled with bracha, with blessing, with goodness, with chesed, with mercy, with kedusha, with holiness, with sanctity, with purity. And it will be with all of the good things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has in store just for you. Someone who has conquered the Yetzer Hara, someone who loves others, and someone who is Ali Ayin, who is above the eyes of this world, but is finding favor in the eyes of the Master of the universe above. May we be Zeiche Im Yetza Hashem, to have the inner strength and fortitude, to find the wherewithal to battle the Yetzer Hara and to win, And may we have the sensitivity and the rahmanis, the mercy on ourselves and on others, not to hate them and to be disappointed and to be angry, but rather to be able to see the good and understand that everything is me'elokim, is coming from Hashem, and therefore nobody can do you harm. Nobody can do you wrong. It's all messages from Hashem. And when we live like that, we learn that, we understand that, we make that our modus operandi of life over here, then we will be zeicha to the greatest bracha of all, when Hashem's einayim, His eyes of love and concern and compassion and warmth and giving and caring and mercifulness will be on us always, bringing such bracha and blessing to our lives. Have a wonderful night, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Rabbi Horowitz.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.